All right, so I did a repaint of the Todd McFarlane Bane Build-A-Figure. Now I'm going to do a reveal in a minute, but I'm a little bit upset that my lights are so bright, it kind of drowns out some of what I was going for. Maybe I'll put a picture in the thumbnail. You can see like a clearer version, but right here where the light's hitting it, it's so bright it's kind of knocking down the fact that I was going for a stretched and swollen looking flesh-like Bane, meaning I don't remember this from any of the comics or, you know, cartoons or any animated yada yada yada. I was going for a, when his body bulks up, it's more like a swollen, infected, stretching red, you know, painful bulk. That's what I was going for, but not too like crazy. Right here is actually showcasing really well. Here's really subtle, but the front is where it it looks great in hand, or at least I'm really proud of it in hand, but through the camera lens, it kind of loses some of that red, swollen, like pink look. But anyhow, we'll get into it in a minute. I know a lot of people like the, I don't know, like the darker tank top. I really wanted to go for like a wife beater look. I had this idea of a sweaty for two reasons. One, this is the very first time I've ever done flesh painting, like a skin tone, and the very first time I've ever tried to paint like a sweaty, dirty, mucky, and we'll go over all of it and I'll give you guys an idea of how I did it. If you're a beginner, this right here was so much fun. I was hooked on getting it done, and it was mainly learning the techniques on how to do some of this. The body and the wife beater were probably the absolute most fun I had putting it together. One thing I'm learning really well when it comes to painting is not going crazy with using different colors. What I mean is, well, let me rephrase that. For example, when you're doing the white wife beater, you don't want to immediately grab like a totally different color and do like a dirty middle. I didn't go white to yellow. I blend the colors. So whatever color I use on the wife beater, I took that white and I added a pinch of gray. Then what I did is I outlined where the sweat areas would be, but I did it farther out. So you can't tell because the light is so bright, but when you have it in hand, it's a very gradual gradient going from, yeah, that light is crushing it. I don't know how it looks on camera, but what I did was I used that white and then a little touch of gray, and I did like this whole area. And then I used the white and did a little touch of, I added another drop of gray and I went even closer, so that way the middle has a really, you know, wet, sweaty look. And then for some of the stains and, you know, wife beaters, when you get heavy stains, it kind of turns the wife beater yellow a bit. So what I did is I did a very watered down, the white with the gray with a touch of yellow, and then I ran it through to kind of give it some of that, you know, sweaty wife beater look. It's kind of, you know, sweating under the armpit there, but it came out great. I friggin' love it. And I know not a lot of people are gonna like the Bane in a wife beater. I already know that from the gate. And then the body, I didn't want the veins to be so prominent green. However, the technique I tried to do kind of failed. My original idea was to use really watered down colors. And, oh yeah, by the way, there's actually a lip sculpt in the mask there for Bane. I noticed that when I was stripping him. If you can look right here, there's like a lip with like a pouty face, like a grrr. It's really hard to, it's really subtle. But anyhow, that and I fixed the legs. I know other people have found ways to fix the leg articulation. Like these legs are on there. You can move them up, down, and around. I mean, they're not falling off. If you have Bane and you know the legs will just pop right off. What I did was, and I didn't glue this piece down yet just so I can show you in the review. What I did was I literally, you just need to slice it, but I just took out the chunk right here. I cut it here, and this little strip of material, I got rid of it. Then what I did was I rounded the edges here, because if you actually have this figure, you know that this is a sharp edge, or yeah, it's an edge, and then the pants were an edge, and they met and they touched each other, creating a seam. However, in their genius wisdom, I don't know why they did this, what happens is when you pop this leg on, this edge and this edge keeps the leg from popping on all the way. I promise you, as hard as you think you're popping that leg on, this on the original figure is keeping it from popping on all the way and staying on. So you can either make a slit there. You don't have to do this at all. I did this just because when I pose him, I knew that it wouldn't even be something you would notice right off the rip. But when I pose him, if this is a smooth edge, when you go up, it'll slide under the rough edge a lot easier. So that way when you move some of the legs, it slides under it. Before, I wish I left part of it original so I could showcase. When you moved it up, it would butt against that and it would just push the leg off and it'll pop it off. But you only have to put a slit in here. And what that'll do is when you lift the leg, it'll lift the, where it's slit at, it'll lift the material. So there's some give. So when you lift your leg, you're actually pushing this material up where that slit is. But like I said, I took it out to give me more articulation, and so it didn't butt up against it. I did that little technique there of rounding off the bottoms. And I don't mind it because he looks fantastic, and you don't even really notice it when you first look at him. But yeah, the skin tone, what I did to achieve this was I started with a base of, you know, some really like cream, orange, a tiny touch of blue, some other stuff, like I mixed it in there. I got the right flesh tone that I wanted. And for the chest, I did a really pale. I did it paler than the arms. I wanted the arms to have a little more flesh tone to them. I wanted this to be like kind of pale and sickly because he's growing and stretching and yada, yada, yada. So I took the flesh tone, it painted his whole body. Even underneath, he's all painted. I took this top off all the way and just painted his body. You pull these down and then you pop the top right through here. Don't go under like a regular shirt, go up. Anyhow, warm them with a hair dryer. You pop them all down. This guy was easier to actually put his body parts in warm water and then pop them all into parts. Anyhow, what I did was the flesh tone in a base, and then I would go in with a little bit pinker, and I would go all the raised areas, like the raised muscle here, this bicep here. I would leave them all the base color, and then I would go in at the cracks and do a good amount beyond the cracks where I made it a little redder, and then I kept doing that. Maybe 3 or 4 layers, getting a little darker, and when each layer of red, I did less higher up. For example, I stayed focused in the crack. So that gave it a really nice subtle, it's kind of easier to do with a air gun, you know what I mean? The word's escaping me. But, and then finally I used like a really darker red and really watered down and kind of brushed it on and all over. So that way you got these stretchy muscle-like look to it. So you have the shoulder here, you have his bicep, and you can move him. He is painted all the way through. I do have to fix up. I was in a bit of a rush. I knocked off some paint there just because I didn't let the paint bond to the plastic, and I just wanted to pop his arms on to see how he looked. That was me being impatient. That's another tip I've noticed with painting these. You want the paint to cure. What that is you want it to bond to the plastic. So when you paint this guy, if you paint him and you let it dry, and an hour later you go like this, you're going to scratch the paint right off. Like I can do this and scratch with my nail and scratch the paint right off all over. I mean, if I did that an hour after painting them, I'd be taking the paint off, even with a varnish, no matter what. You wait an hour, it's a little stronger. You wait, 5 hours, it's even better. It's bonding the longer you let it sit. You let it sit 24 to 48 to 72 hours. That's like the prime. Let it sit a few days, and it's on there like a figure, like a figure you get from the store. You could take your nail, scratch the hell out of it, and you're not peeling any paint off it. Far too often I see people starting to paint and getting into doing customs, and they'll paint them up. He'll look amazing. They'll do it in one day, and they'll put them all together and start moving them around, and the paint's chipping and yada, yada, yada. Sure, there's things you can do to help the paint adhere to the plastic early on, absolutely, but no matter what, you're going to want the paint to bond to the plastic. That means paint it, set it down, and leave it alone for at least 48 hours at the bare minimum. You can move it around, but like I said, this is what's going to happen. So I moved them around, and I got some of his elbow in there that took off some paint because I didn't allow the paint to bond to the plastic. Anyhow, let's pop his arm back on there. Another thing that I did that's kind of a little bit of a tip if you wanted, when I put them back together, I went in with a razor and a Dremel, and I don't know what to call it, but I removed some excess from the wrist and the head, meaning if you look inside here, I'm actually creating a tunnel system. That I got to fix that. It's too small, but he's going to have pipes going in, tubes going into his mask. So that's coming later. I just don't have time to do that right now. Anyway, what I did is I scraped the inside of the mask out to give it just a little bit more room when you're moving his head side to side for a little bit of attitude. Right now, you pop his head on and he doesn't move, or he barely moves. So scraping the wrists, like in here. This one just popped off before, didn't it? Now, well, was it this one? Yeah, it was that one. All right, so I went in here and I scraped some on the inside. I should have did more. I was thinking about it, but I ran out of time. Scrape some of that out. And what that does is, instead of this being real thick, and you go to move the wrist articulation, and it's hitting up against that material, when you scrape that out real good, in certain cases, when you go ahead and move the wrist, he has a lot more range because it's not butting up against that. Now this was a little bit of an awkward showcase because it's not as bad as some figures that I've seen where you need to make some extra clearance. Anyhow, so pop this head on, and like I said before, the mask was just butting up against his skin all over the place. So now he has just a little bit of extra movement. You can see down and then up. And then when you do some side to side, you get a little more attitude just because he's got some extra space. Now, it's not a ton because you only have a little bit to work with. I decided to go with, originally I was going to do the white mask with a blue outline and then the black mask. I'm sorry, white bat symbol, blue outline, and black mask. However, I like the blue that I utilized so much on his boots. Originally, this was going to be green metal, and I was going to make them really bright and loud. However, once I started doing this blue and black combination, I fell in love with it, and I stopped. I restripped this and repainted it, and I went with this blue and black outline, and I decided I wanted to make the eyes the green. The same green here. It's going to be the same metallic green I'm using on the tank that I'm going to put on his back with the hoses that's going to go here. And then in his mask, I drilled out holes for the hoses. I went ahead and repainted these instead of just putting my own hoses. Oh well. So I got the same green here for the Venom, the same green in his belt, and it's the same green in his eyes. I don't know how well that's going to show. So I stripped his head of the paint, and then I used alcohol, rubbing alcohol, carefully stripped it. And then what I did was I used Mod Podge, so it looks like, and I brushed it on like dabbing it on, so it looks like there's some sweat on his mask. It was kind of hard to do. It was a little tricky. I didn't think it was going to work out, but you can't really see it unless you're looking through it like this. But anyhow, I gave him the green metallic eyes. I did the bat symbol black, and then I did that white outline, and then the blue mask, and I friggin' love it. I know it's not like your normal Bane, but I wanted to do something a little different. And he's got that like infected, swollen look to the body that I am really happy with how it came out. And again, it's a practice piece. The next time I paint a body like this, I'm going to do even better, and then so on and so on. This was a lot of fun. If I started over and did this again, it would probably look 3 times as good. I noticed my flaws early on when I was doing it, but I didn't want to stress the material because it's a softer, it's easily degradable compared to the harder plastic. It's that soft plastic. Anyhow, when you look along his, well, let's cover his arms first. We'll go head, chest, his wife beater. I did a simple black on the canisters here, and then brushed like a metallic dry brush, a heavy dry brush on it. I paint all the buckles with that same metallic color, and then I did blue and black for all the pads. Like here, I love how that came out. You have the black pad, you got the blue with black trim. Same thing here with his wrist wraps. You have blue with the black trim. Again here with a black button, and then you got the copper with some black in the cuts and cracks. And then here I was going to create brass knuckles. I'm still going to put them in. It's going to be a set of brass knuckles that has spikes on them. But I want to showcase, if you're taking your time, always do the darker color last. So paint these hands. And what I did is, it's not showing up well on the lighting here, but I added the same type of gradient paint where inside the cracks is like extra pink and red type of orangey paint. It's not showing up well because the light is blasting it. But when you look at it in person, it looks pretty good because it's got like a good flesh color to it. Anyhow, go in there and paint the fingers, and then you go in the end and then you paint the black color on here, and get what you spilled over from the fingers onto the glove. That's the word I'm looking for. So originally the paint was kind of messy on the McFarlane, and you can see how clean you can get it if you just use a really thin brush and then take your time. Here's his other fist, a really clean brush. Take your time, and wow, he's a big guy. It doesn't spill over. See, in there it's nice and clean. And he is painted all the way in. And see how this is still holding up? Because I let this cure, so you can move him and it's not going to mess the paint up. Same thing with this arm. You can move him around and it's not going to be messing the paint up. Actually, I did have a mess up somewhere. Yeah, here's what happens if you're too impatient. This is a mess up job right when I got done painting them. It was the wife beater. The wife beater pressed down on the paint too hard. Now look, when you first paint them, this was an hour after I painted them, and it rubbed the paint off. Now that he's been sitting and the paint has bonded for a couple days, this wife beater will not rub that paint off. Anyhow, I did the buckles with silver, the rivets. Got a nice blue and black combo here, matching the rest of it. You got his belt, blue and black all the way around with the silver. Now, here's something clever. I thought was clever. This, on the original figure, buckles in. It tabs into the shorts. And I didn't like that because it made the shorts really stiff when you went to flex his leg. See how this material moves a touch when you flex the leg back? Well, this would stop that from happening because this was buckled in there and glued in there, tabbed in there. So what I did was I just filled this with some plastic that is the plastic you can heat up. I filled it, painted it black. It doesn't matter how it looks because it's covered up. And then I took this out. So that way, when you lift his leg, there's flex and then this moves. You don't need this to be buckled down. There's sometimes where McFarlane Toys makes these decisions that's kind of like they have control issues, like the Spawn cape for his Kickstarter. It should be removable, but he had there's those control issues. Oh, it's not going to be perfectly seated, at all times if I let fans remove the cape. So they just glue it when they said they weren't going to do that. Weird choices like this, I don't understand. But anyhow, so he has got this blue stripe, darker pants. And then I left these kind of black. I was going to do individual pockets. You can do that, kind of make them pop a little bit more, but I just went for some stealth pockets there. You got copper here in the knee pad. There's the silver with the laces, or the buckles, I should say, and then the blue with the laces, the black. There's some metal there, and like the steel toe tips came out really cool. Here's that copper on this side. I love the different tone there with the blue and the black. And that's pretty much it. He's got this little pouch. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. I think some of these look incredible if you get in there with a lot of small brushes and do some really fine detail, because the sculpt is there, and the sculpt is pretty cool on a lot of these. But you go in there with a fine brush and you do like the buckles and even do this. I skipped doing this. I just left them as black ones. They're common, but all these little bit of fine details. A lot of that paint is just flat out missing on the original. So a lot of the spawns, or a Spawn and McFarlane in the DC, they look amazing sculpt wise, but the paint applications have been slacking hardcore. Anyhow, so that's it. Just wanted to show off my custom repainted Bane. You guys let me know what you think down in the comment box below. Some thoughts and opinions. That's it. All right, bye.